I'm Emily Carter, 29, a painter barely making rent in New York City with stained fingers, a fading gallery resume, and a last name that's more curse than crown. The Carter family built an empire on appearances, but behind those velvet curtains, abuse, control, and silence so thick it choked you. They called me the mistake, the disappointment, the one who didn't fit their perfect picture. What they didn't expect was that I'd be the one holding the pen when the family legacy got rewritten. But before I tell you how I went from black sheep to sole heir and exposed the rot buried beneath generations of Carter wealth, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated, cut off, or told to know your place. Because this isn't just a story about inheritance. It's about reclaiming power they swore you'd never have. The harsh March wind rattled my apartment windows like it was knocking, just to remind me of the world outside. A world I'd spent nearly a decade trying to keep at bay. I stared at the cracked paint on the windowsill, fingers stained with cobalt and burnt sienna. The unfinished canvas in front of me, a swirling mess of rooftops and reflection, mocked me with its chaos. I'd meant to paint New York at dawn. Somehow it turned into something stormier. The notification ping on my laptop jolted me more than the wind. I moved toward the screen, apron still tied at the back, crusted with dry paint like armor. The email subject line made my breath catch. Subject: Your presence is required. Reading of the last will and testament of Robert Carter Sr. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. Instead, I sat on the paint-splattered futon, that dreadful carpet of memories unfurling beneath me. My mother's voice echoed, clipped, cold, unforgettable. A waste of tuition. I was 18, trembling in the foyer of our estate, acceptance letter to the Rhode Island School of Design in hand. She didn't rip it up, not physically, but her words did the job well enough. And yet, in that same house, just days later, Grandpa leaned over during brunch, his hand shaking from age but eyes sharp as ever, and whispered, "You see the world differently, and someday that will matter." I clung to that moment like a child clutching a flashlight under the covers. That flashlight had gotten me through art school, late rent notices, one failed gallery show, and a part-time job teaching watercolor to overworked corporate executives. The screen dimmed. The email still glared at me. I finally clicked. The language was formal. Prescott and Associates, executors of the late Robert Carter Sr.'s estate, invited me to attend the official reading of the will on March 14th at Carter Estate, Greenwich, Connecticut. Business attire requested. I didn't laugh, didn't cry. Just sat there, numb, then closed the laptop gently like it might explode. "Let me guess," Jasmine said from the kitchen, where she was brewing her third cup of green tea. "The ghost of Carter Pass wants you to show up and get humiliated. Again." "Bingo," I muttered. Jasmine emerged, tea in one hand, her other holding a bowl of leftover soup. "And yet you opened the email, which is something." I stared at her. She was wearing sweatpants with Yale Law across the hip, though she'd quit that world years ago. Jasmine had once been one of them, a rising legal star in Carter Industries' in-house counsel. That was before she found out just how deep the rot ran. "They'll just laugh at me again," I said quietly, peeling the dried paint off my thumb. Jasmine sat beside me, her tone softening. "Maybe, or maybe this time you'll be the one who gets the last word." I turned that over in my head like a coin, shiny, dangerous, tempting. "You think he left me anything?" She shrugged. "You were the only one he talked about like you had a soul." The scarf was hanging on the coat rack, hand-painted, deep plum and orange streaks running across it like a rebel flame. Grandpa gave it to me on my 21st birthday, saying it reminded him of freedom in motion. I took it down, folding it carefully into my bag like a shield. Just then, my phone buzzed. "Mother, Victoria Carter. Wear something appropriate this time." I didn't reply. I just stared at the message until the screen dimmed again. I hadn't set foot in the estate in years, but apparently the door was still open, just wide enough for mockery. The wrought iron gates of the Carter estate creaked open as my rideshare pulled into the curved driveway. Gravel crunched under the tires like brittle bones. The house stood as it always had, grand, symmetrical, intimidating. Nothing had changed, and that was the problem. Time froze here, embalmed in old money and cold traditions. The butler, new, stiff, and suspicious, squinted at me as if I were a delivery. I gave my name. He checked a list without expression and motioned me in without a word. Not even a welcome back. I stepped inside and was swallowed by the silence of marble halls and curated oil paintings. The air smelled of lemon polish and disdain. A flood of memory hit me like static. Christmas 2020, the last time I dared enter this mausoleum. They sat me at the staff table that year, next to a woman who carved turkey with more warmth than anyone sharing my DNA. My father's words echoed with fresh venom. You'll always be the Carter mistake. My room, or what used to be my room, was now a storage closet, crowded with unopened boxes and a broken elliptical. A beige guest towel had been draped over the mattress like a shroud. I didn't unpack. I just sat on the edge of the bed, the silk scarf still knotted around my neck like a lifeline. Dinner was announced by the echo of a bell. No one came to fetch me. The dining room looked ripped from a heritage magazine. Long mahogany table, glinting crystal, sterile laughter. I walked in alone. They were already seated. Heads turned. Expressions tightened. "Oh," Natalie said, blinking as if I'd brought in a draft. "Look who didn't get lost." She looked pristine as ever. Hair sleek, pearls centered, mouth curved into a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Victoria didn't rise. "Emily," she said coolly, "we've arranged for you to sit near the kitchen. Easier for the staff to pass you dishes." I froze. "Tradition," she added, waving a hand. "Don't overthink it." I took the seat at the end of the table, technically still within earshot, but just far enough to be visually excluded. Beside me, a distant cousin looked apologetic. Across the table, Brandon gave a small wave with his phone still in his hand, recording a shaky video of the centerpiece for his followers. I stabbed a roasted carrot with my fork. Douglas stood for a toast. He raised his glass with solemn gravity. "To legacy," he said. "To honor. To the future of the Carter name." There was a pause, long enough for most to glance at Natalie, then Brandon. No mention of me. Not even a sideways acknowledgement. Forks clinked, glasses raised. I didn't drink. Dessert came, a delicate crème brûlée with a perfectly crisped top. I couldn't taste it. Natalie leaned across her plate, eyes locked on my scarf. "Is that paint?" she asked, faux curious. "Or is it just supposed to look dirty?" My jaw tightened. She turned back to her wine without waiting for a reply. "Oh well, statement pieces, I guess." Whispers circled like vultures. Somewhere near the fireplace, I heard someone say, "She probably thinks she'll get a charity clause or something." I wanted to laugh or cry. I did neither. After coffee, the crowd thinned. I escaped to the hallway, desperate for a crack of air. That's when I heard heels and felt a presence behind me. Victoria. She didn't speak for a moment, just stood, hands folded neatly. "Try not to embarrass us tomorrow, Emily. You're still technically part of this family." Technically. The word landed with surgical precision. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. As I turned the corner, Alan Prescott was shrugging into his coat. His briefcase looked heavier than usual, or maybe that was just my imagination. He paused as I passed. Quietly, he said, "Mr. Carter leaves something uniquely for you. I'll explain tomorrow." He tipped his head, and then he was gone. They thought I came for scraps. Instead, I left them nothing but the truth. The Carter Library smelled of old money and recent panic. High-arched windows let in pale afternoon light that filtered through heavy curtains, casting long shadows across lacquered wood and ancestral oil portraits. I sat at the edge of a velvet armchair, hands folded, scarf tied neatly at my throat. They filled the room slowly, like royalty assembling for coronation. Heads held high, voices hushed, the air ripe with anticipation and entitlement. Victoria entered last, flanked by Douglas and Natalie, her heels clicking like punctuation marks. Brandon strolled in moments later, phone already filming discreetly from his pocket. Prescott stood at the far end of the room, a carved mahogany desk before him. 2 legal assistants sat beside him, silent, watchful, their pens poised like weapons. No one greeted me. The will reading began with civility, on the surface. Prescott read from the document like a surgeon making incisions, to various cousins and relatives, art pieces, trust disbursements, ceremonial shares, to Natalie, the beach house in Martha's Vineyard and a vintage Cartier collection, to Brandon, 3% shares in Carter Industries and exclusive rights to a podcast brand Grandpa had apparently invested in for fun. I watched my sister preen, lips curling in satisfaction. Brandon gave a casual nod like it was owed. Victoria's smile sharpened. Douglas smirked faintly, awaiting their windfall. Prescott turned the page. His eyes flicked toward me before returning to the will. Per the final clause, he began, voice measured, the entirety of Robert Carter Sr.'s controlling shares in Carter Industries, his liquid and real estate assets, intellectual property, and Carter Estate itself are hereby bequeathed in full to Emily Carter. Silence cracked into sound. What? Natalie's voice was first, sharp, brittle. That's ridiculous, Douglas thundered, rising from his chair so quickly his glass toppled. Victoria didn't speak. She swayed once, then sank into her seat like someone had pulled her strings. Her lips moved, but no words followed. Prescott continued, unshaken. Further stipulations clarify that this transfer is immediate and irrevocable. Natalie shot to her feet, knocking a teacup off the table. She manipulated him. She's always been his little charity case. Miss Carter, Prescott interrupted, if I may continue. He pressed a button on a small remote. A screen rolled down from the ceiling like a guillotine. And then his voice filled the room. Grandpa's voice, deep and weathered, threaded with something softer. If you're hearing this, he said, looking straight into the camera, then I'm gone. And I suspect some of you are already clenching your jaws. He smiled, dry, amused, knowing. I spent a lifetime building Carter Industries, but I also spent a lifetime watching my own family forget what it was built for. Honesty, courage, and decency. He turned slightly, as if addressing them in the room. Emily never asked for power, and that's exactly why I trust her with it. I felt something shift inside me. Not triumph, not gloating. Just a strange settling, like a piano key finally tuned. Natalie whispered something obscene. Douglas looked as though he might charge across the room. Prescott raised a palm. There's one final clause, he said calmly. Any legal contestation of Mr. Carter's will shall trigger an immediate, full public release of his private journal and all corresponding digital records. He paused. This includes the Cayman files. Brandon, for the first time, stopped recording. Prescott closed the folder with a soft snap that echoed like a gunshot. The crown I never asked for came with a price, one that would test how far I'd go to protect what was now mine. The first letter arrived 3 days after the will reading, unsigned, typed, and cold. You may consider this a formal request to vacate all claims under the Carter estate until further review. It came in a cream envelope with no return address, just the smell of expensive toner and cowardice. I dropped it on the table without unfolding it fully. Jasmine picked it up with tongs, literally. You'd think they'd at least try certified mail, she muttered, tossing it into the shredder. But that was just the beginning. The phone didn't stop ringing. emails with vague threats, legal language dressed up like civility. Then came the cease and desist from Carter Holdings Corporate Counsel, veiled in legalese but crystal clear in intent. Freeze assets, delay disbursements, and force negotiation. They want to make you bleed slowly, Prescott said over the phone, voice clipped but calm. But they didn't read the fine print as carefully as we did. I stared at my laptop, the wallpaper still a photo of my final watercolor exhibit. Before all this, the scarf lay coiled beside the keyboard like a snake waiting to strike. Prescott continued, "If they retaliate, we retaliate with the truth." That truth arrived on a rainy Thursday, sealed in a gunmetal safe with a note in Grandpa's handwriting. For Emily, trust no one but yourself, and maybe Jasmine. Inside, a thick, leather-bound journal, edges frayed but cleanly organized by year. Beneath it, a small USB drive, taped shut with 3 letters scratched into its side. ECI didn't open the journal right away. I sat with it on my lap, breathing in the scent of old paper and something heavier. Intent. Jasmine brewed tea like it was wartime ration. She didn't say anything until I opened the first page and started reading aloud. 2017. Victoria's philanthropy arm has shifted $1.2 million to a shell in Delaware. The charity gala will look beautiful this year. Funded by Stolen Hope. I flipped further. 2020. Douglas met with Alan Firth behind Board's back, suggested insider play around quarterly results, warned him, ignored me. Another entry. Brandon posts like a fool but notices more than he lets on. Natalie is sharp but ruthless. Emily sees more than they think. She listens. The final journal entry was clipped to an audio file on the USB. We played it through Jasmine's old MacBook, the speakers tinny but damning. Victoria's voice, unmistakable. Emily should never inherit a damn thing from us. She doesn't carry the Carter blood where it counts. Silence followed. Jasmine didn't blink. She reached for her legal pad. If we send this to Forbes or the IRS, hell, even BuzzFeed, it's nuclear. But it ends them. I didn't respond immediately. I looked out the rain-spattered window, the city blurred into gray. My hands felt steady. Steadier than they had any right to be. Not yet, I said. Let's give them one last chance to stand down. Jasmine arched an eyebrow. Mercy? Strategy. She nodded once, then placed the USB into a sleek black case and spun the lock. We use this, only if they come at us again. I met her gaze without flinching. Then polish it. They will. You can't make peace with people who want your silence more than your survival. The sunlight poured through the stained glass dome of the Carter Estate's grand atrium, casting fragmented colors across the marble floor. The chairs had been arranged deliberately, low-backed, set in a half-moon, all beneath the elevated dais where I sat. It wasn't an accident. Jasmine had called it a subtle architectural correction. Prescott, standing to my right, simply called it leverage. They entered like ghosts walking their own wake. Victoria's heels clicked with hollow pride. Douglas's jaw was set so tight I could see the pulse in his temple. Natalie trailed behind, her expression unreadable. Brandon came last, hands shoved in his pockets, nodding at me like we shared a secret. I didn't stand. I didn't ask for power, I said. My voice filled the room without rising. I was given it by the only Carter who saw clearly. I slid the folder across the glass table with a soft whisper. It stopped precisely in front of Douglas. Victoria didn't touch it. She didn't need to. She knew what it was. Prescott stepped forward. Included are transaction records, wire trails, and 5 years of irregularities concerning Carter Foundation funds. We have documented paths to 2 shell corporations and statements that match your private charity withdrawals. Victoria's lips parted, but no sound came. Should any further legal threats be issued? Prescott continued. We are prepared to release everything to the press. And not just the press. We've reserved disclosures to both the IRS and a congressional watchdog. That includes the Cayman documentation. Douglas opened the folder with hands that trembled only slightly. The room went quiet. Then, from the left, a voice cracked. I didn't know. Natalie looked at me, eyes glistening but dry. I just wanted to be enough. Her words echoed longer than I expected. I took a breath. Not because I needed to compose myself, but because I didn't want to lose the tone of calm authority, the one Grandpa used when silencing a boardroom. I'm offering terms, I said. I turned to Victoria and Douglas first. You will vacate the estate within 60 days. Prescott's team will oversee the transfer. Victoria blinked, stunned. Natalie, I continued, you may assist with the nonprofit arm of the Carter Foundation. Under supervision. If you're serious about legacy, prove it. Natalie nodded once, a small quake beneath still water. And Brandon, he perked up. You'll be invited to participate in a leadership development track. If you show up, stay sober and stop streaming in boardrooms. He grinned. Deal. Victoria finally broke the silence. We're still your parents. I turned to her slowly. You chose power over parenting. This is me choosing peace over revenge. There was a long pause. No one moved. Then Jasmine snapped the folder shut. We're done here. Prescott gestured to the exit. Victoria rose, eyes hollow. Douglas followed stiffly, as if walking underwater. Brandon gave me a thumbs up before slipping out behind them. Only Natalie lingered. She turned back at the door, voice quieter now. Did he ever forgive me? I met her eyes. That depends on what you do next. He built the empire. They stained it. I will restore it, on my own terms. The ballroom shimmered in a warm cascade of golds and silvers, but it was the blue banners of the Carter Foundation, newly rebranded, subtly modernized, that caught everyone's attention. They hung above the stage like calm waves lapping against history. 100 faces turned toward me as I stepped to the podium, the weight of the moment pressing gently on my shoulders, no longer heavy, just present. This foundation isn't about fixing the past, I said, my voice clear over the hush. It's about building futures. Applause followed, but not the thunderous, obligatory kind. It was measured, honest, like the cause itself. From the edge of the stage, Jasmine gave me a nod. Calm, proud, already scanning the crowd for press risks like the lawyer she'd always been, but now with a title to match. Head of Legal, Carter Foundation 2.0. Beside her stood Brandon, arms crossed, grinning at the group of teens he'd brought in from his latest mentorship seminar. They weren't dressed for galas, hoodies, scuffed sneakers, bright eyes. They were perfect. And Natalie? Yes, she was here too. A clipboard in hand, shepherding guests between panels. Her posture stiffer than it used to be, her voice more measured. But when a child asked her where to find the art tent, she knelt down to point the way, not realizing her smile looked just like Grandpa's. Somewhere between the speeches and the champagne, I slipped away to the office upstairs. It had been Robert Carter Sr.'s once. Walnut shelves, brass lamp, leather chair that still groaned in the same way when I sat down. But the portraits were gone, replaced by framed sketches from community artists and a photo of the gala's first graduating class. I opened the bottom drawer, a single envelope, yellowed slightly, sealed with the family crest. I unfolded it slowly. You were never broken, just buried. Now rise. I closed my eyes, let the words settle. When I returned to the main floor, the final ceremony was already underway. A glass document lay on the signing table, the new charter making the Carter Foundation a public benefit nonprofit. I signed with a pen that had once signed oil deals and land grabs and mergers. Tonight, it created scholarships and shelters. As the ink dried, the room burst into applause. Someone whispered behind me, soft, odd, maybe caught by a hot mic. She's the real Carter now. I didn't turn to see who said it. Later, after photos and handshakes and speeches, Jasmine handed me her phone. "A message came in," she said, "from a girl in your old art class. She wants to know if you're still teaching." I smiled. Not the press smile, not the Carter smile. "Tell her Thursday nights I kept a stool open," I said. They underestimated her silence, mistaking restraint for weakness. But when the truth was finally spoken, through files, foundations, and unshaken grace, it tore through years of deceit like light through a cracked wall. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives as a woman who simply refuses to bow. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But once it's heard, it echoes forever. And so the legacy was rewritten, not in vengeance, but in quiet, unstoppable truth.